Listen, The Monkey from 2025 is like if Final Destination from 2000 and Annabelle from 2014 had a common cousin that just will turn up to Thanksgiving dinners or Christmas dinners. I don't know if that made sense, but that's how I felt more or less about The Monkey. Hi everyone, welcome back to another video here on the channel Royal Horror. I'm very pleased to have you here to talk about films, to talk about horror films, and just interact overall about like films in general. And as you already thought, what we're going to do today is we're going to be reviewing and we're going to be discussing, talking about the newest horror film released in 2025, and that will be The Monkey, directed by the one and only director of Longlegs, Osgood Perkins. Now, briefly talking with my experience with this film, this is actually my fourth most anticipated film of the year, right before Companion and right after Final Destination 6, Vicious and Conjuring 4. So I was very excited the moment this movie got announced, mostly because obviously James Wan was a producer, Osgood Perkins, director of Longlegs, one of my top 10 horror films of last year. Also Theo James is one of my favorite actors, and this is like his first horror, so that got me very excited. And obviously just like the storyline, you know, like it's a Stephen King original kind of book. So I was very excited to see how they would portray this. The monkey, like that I could see in the posters everywhere. That toy was very freaky, and I'm a big fan of toys in horror, like Annabelle or The Boy, etc. So I was very excited about it, and that's why this was my fourth most anticipated. So in The Monkey, directed by Osgood Perkins, everybody dies, and that's fucked up. When twin brothers find a mysterious wind-up monkey, a series of outrageous deaths tear their families apart. 25 years later, the monkey begins a new killing spree, forcing the strange brothers to confront their cursed toy. So briefly talking about the positives and the negatives, let's just start talking about the negatives so we take that out of the way. Like overall, I feel good about this film. I didn't feel disappointed. I think my main negative aspect that goes to this film is, I believe, the marketing, because the marketing of this film is honestly not the greatest. I really didn't like the way this movie was marketed on social media or on the posters in the city, because this was marketed as the scariest film of the year, or like one of the scariest films that would not let you sleep. And honestly, I'm a bit tired of that synopsis, because it was the same for Companion, it will be the same for the rest of the horror films of the year, and it has been like that for the last couple of years, and that's really tiring me, because one, like, scares or like disturbingness, or like if the movie is the scariest film of the year, that's based on every single individual, you know, because for example, for some people, yes, this can be the scariest film ever, but for some others, this can be the lamest film ever. So I don't think films should be marketed as the scariest, the most disturbing, or the funniest in some cases, because I feel like that's very subjective. So I don't feel like that's like, I don't think films should have that pressure when it's marketed, because some people will go with super high expectations, and because they didn't meet those expectations, they will feel disappointed, and I think that can damage the film's popularity, let's say. Now, one of the things that I do appreciate, and this can be in between my mixed thoughts, because this is positive and negative, is that I do feel like The Monkey knew how to combine two subgenres, which are comedy and horror. And this is something that I really admire from Osgood Perkins, because he really wanted to make something different than Longlegs. And obviously, I'm not going to be comparing here, but I'm just really glad that he decided to do something completely different. You know, Longlegs was more disturbing, psychological, dark horror. Like, that movie didn't have any kind of comedy. But in The Monkey, there is a lot of comedy. There's obviously a dark humor, horror comedy, let's say. So it's very surprising, and it's very admirable for me to see Osgood Perkins coming from something like Longlegs to The Monkey. And that's something that I appreciate overall with any director, when they want to make something different in their filmography, and everything is mostly original horrors, you know. So really happy for Osgood Perkins for giving us this film. However, I do have to say that just because a director does that, it doesn't mean that it can be 100% well executed, and that's something that I have to critique from The Monkey, in my opinion, because I did feel like the comedy doesn't really work in this film. I feel like the comedy lines here were too forced, they were too flat, they were too, like, the actors were reading it and saying it to the camera, you know, like they didn't feel natural. And it's surprising because I didn't laugh once in this film, like at all, zero. And it's not like I have a dark heart, because like I said before, Companion, which I reviewed before, I gave that film 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10. That film for now is it's the best film of the year for me. One of the things that I liked about Companion is that that movie knew how to have comedy that will feel natural, comedy that it will feel like you can hear those lines in real life. But with The Monkey, it just didn't feel natural at all. I didn't believe those characters were saying those lines on their wheel, if that makes sense. So yeah, the comedy didn't really work for me, and that brings me to the point of, if a film is gonna have comedy, I really don't mind, but like not every film needs comedy. And yes, The Monkey works with comedy because of the synopsis, because it's a toy. But I mean that varies, because just because it's a toy doesn't mean that it needs to be a dark comedy. Because for example, look, Annabelle is not a comedy film, etc. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that in The Monkey, the comedy was almost like every 2 minutes. Like every 2 minutes you could hear a joke. Every 2 minutes you could see the characters trying to be funny with their movements, with their facial expressions, with the lines, with the execution, with the editing. And I feel like I was watching a comedy with horror elements, not a horror film with comedy elements. And I think that's something that fails in The Monkey, because it doesn't really work as a comedy, even though the director, the writers, and like the team behind want this film to be a comedy. But in my opinion, it just didn't really work. It could have worked better if the comedy was smoother, if it was more natural, or if it wasn't too much in your face. But maybe that's just me, because my screening, oh my god, like my screening kept laughing and laughing and laughing. Like when I tell you that the two guys next to me, they were laughing as if they were getting paid for it. I was like, how are you guys laughing at what's happening in the screen? Like, it's not that it's not funny, or it's not like I'm cold-blooded. It's just that sometimes things are not supposed to be funny. So I was very confused. I was very confused on why everyone was laughing so much. So let me know if your screening laughed like that much in your screening, because my screening, I felt that I was in a comedy screening rather than in a horror. Another critique that I have to give to this film is honestly The Monkey itself. Even though The Monkey itself is like the biggest marketing item for this film, obviously the monkey, like without that monkey this movie wouldn't exist. It's not that I'm critiquing the monkey, the character itself. I'm critiquing the film and how it worked with the monkey. I feel like we didn't have enough exposure of the monkey. I feel like the monkey was barely on the screen, or like on the movie itself, and I wish that monkey, that toy, was more, or like I wish we had more exposure, more maybe a backstory, or like I wish we could know why the monkey was doing this, or like what's the reason behind why that monkey like sticked with the twin brothers like years after, and all of that. And I didn't need a whole 40 minutes backstory, don't get me wrong, but maybe a flashback could have worked for me, because I feel like with toys I prefer a little bit of explanation. Like for example with Annabelle or with the boy, they don't really spend so much time with the backstory, but they just give like barely like 10 minutes in the opening of those two films. And I wish the monkey did that, because sometimes I felt like the monkey could not shine, even though this is like its film, you know? Just before we jump into the positives, another critique that I have is maybe when the twins are kids, that's when the monkey is at its best, you know, because it's a monkey against two kids, against their mom. So it feels more like, you know, the innocence from a child against what this toy is doing, rather than 25 years later, which, by the way, I don't understand why we jumped that much in this movie. I feel like we missed a huge gap in between. I feel like we missed their teenage years with the monkey, because what do you mean we jump from when they are 10 or 11 to when they are in their 30s? You know, like that just didn't make sense for me. And once we are in the present, when Theo James is like obviously a grown up and all of that, I feel like the movie starts to miss its magic that built at the beginning of the movie. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's not like I felt bored. I was pretty much entertained, but obviously we'll talk about that in the positives. Because for example, if I compare this quickly to Annabelle or The Boy from 2016 and 2020, I believe is the sequel from. Then we have grown-ups too interacting with toys, like haunted toys. But because they don't have that much of comedy, or they don't have comedy at all, it works better. So you feel more threatened by the toy when that toy is interacting with these grown-ups. But in The Monkey, I was not really caring that much about Theo James and his interaction with the monkey, because I feel like I didn't really discover him as a character before his 30s. I really didn't care, so I just couldn't understand why the monkey will come back to his life 25 years later, or why his twin was the way he was 25 years later. Like, what happened in those 25 years is a lot of time for you to not give us any kind of information. Quickly passing to the positives, I do have to say, technical wise, this movie is perfect. I love the cinematography, I love the editing. Like, you could tell the team behind Longlegs worked in this film, and you can tell that by miles. I love that this movie felt like a cursed kind of like book brought to life. I think that was gorgeous. I love the lighting plans in this film. I love the set design, the camera work. I loved like the way the characters were interacting with their locations, the way the camera was moving with their characters. Love the score, love the soundtrack. The sound design was perfect, especially because of the kills. If we talk about the kills and the gore, that absolutely delivered. I was so entertained with the way this movie gave us the kills. I'm so glad this movie was graphic. Even though this movie is 15 plus, this movie managed to give us the gore. And again, I like the performances from everyone. I think everyone kind of belonged to this film, so I was very pleased with them. Again, Theo James, even though I didn't like his character too much, I did like his performance. I think he was a very likable guy. I think he did his best with what he had, portraying two twins, because what's better than one Theo James? Two Theo James. So now another positive aspect that I have to give for this film, and even though I critiqued its comedy, I do have to say that I'm so glad The Monkey didn't take itself that serious. Like, the movie was having fun, so much fun with itself, with its characters, with its storyline, with its editing, with its everything. And that's something that I really appreciate, because maybe if the movie was as it is, and maybe if the movie was that serious, even though it had that much of comedy, it wouldn't have worked, you know. But overall, I feel great about this film. I gave this film 3 stars and a half, 7 out of 10. I feel pretty happy about it. Like, I'm not mad about it. I feel like it just works more as a comedy with horror elements than a horror with comedy elements. But that's fine. I can wait to rewatch this. I would love to own this. I think it's a fun film. I think it's a film that can make you feel chill, relaxed. But let me know in the comment section below, how did you feel about The Monkey? Have you watched this film? Would you watch this film? Are you excited about it? But overall, I do hope that you have a nice end of the week. We will talk so soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye.